What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Now, as I'm sure a lot of you are already aware, we've already gone and ranked all of the primary weapons in the Assault, Medic, and Support classes. Today, we are moving on to the final class in the game, the Scout. Now, the Scout, or the Recon, or the Sniper, whatever you want to call it, is very difficult to rank weapons against each other because a lot of the weapons are extremely similar to something else, i.e. they perform the exact same role with only minute differences. And when you get towards the top of the class, really all you're doing is differentiating things based on very tiny, very minute differences in bullet velocity, ideal sweet spot ranges, and magazine capacity. That's really the three things. So because of that, the Scout class, more than any other class in the game, in my opinion, is ranked mostly on feel. Like how you personally feel when you use the weapon, your past experiences with each gun. So, my rankings are probably going to differ a lot from yours, for example, so let me know what you think of the list, and leave a comment down below where you think I've gone terribly wrong. But anyway, as always, this list is based purely upon my own opinion, with a few stats sprinkled in here and there from things I remember over my years of playing this game, and this video is completely unscripted, just with my raw thoughts on each weapon as I read their name. But with that out of the way guys, let's get right into the video. Okay, kicking off the list in the D tier, the first weapon I have here is the Veterelli Vitali M1870-87. Now, before you run to the comments saying, it's just a better Martini Henry, hear me out, okay? So, the Martini Henry and the Veterelli Vitali have the same sweet spot range, right? They're the ultra close range Scout classes. They have super low bullet velocity, but they're meant to be used really aggressively to be taking people down with the rest of your team as you push onto objectives, right? The Veterelli Vitali has more ammunition, whereas the Martini Henry deals more damage per bullet within the sweet spot range. The Martini Henry does about 112, 114, whereas the Veterelli Vitali only does 100. Now, the reason the Martini Henry is so good is because in that sweet spot range where it does 112, 114 damage, it one-shots to any part of the body, whether that be the chest, the head, the arms, or the legs. It completely negates the effect of the arm and leg shot demultiplier, right? The Veterelli Vitali, on the other hand, doesn't get that same treatment. If you hit an arm, or a leg, or a hand, you're not going to get the one-shot kill anymore. It drops down to like 60-ish, 70-ish damage, right? The reason this in particular hurts the Veterelli Vitali so much, in my opinion, is because in the ideal ranges you're meant to be using these weapons, people are able to actively shoot back at you more than any other range for other sniper rifles, right? Think about this, like when you're using the Veterelli Vitali and the Martini Henry, you are in ranges where not only supports and medics can shoot back, but also assaults, who are the majority of players in this game. They can actively engage you if they see you. And so because of that, if two players are looking at each other, one's using the Veterelli Vitali, and one is using an Automatico for existence, and they both see each other at the same time, and they both ADS at the same time, the Veterelli Vitali, if he's aiming at chest height, is more than likely going to hit the assault player's arms as they go and ADS into that animation where their arms move centrally, right? And then because of that, you don't get the kill, and while in the time it takes you to rechamber, the Automatico has sprayed you down. This has happened so many times for me when using the rifle, and because the rifle's bullet velocity is so low, really the only thing you'd use it for is that sweet spot. And even its magazine capacity of only 4 rounds is lower than every other rifle outside of the Martini Henry, because the standard is 5, right? So if the sweet spot isn't working for you, what reason do you have to use the rifle? don't get me wrong. If you are good with the Veterelli Vitali, I hand it to you. Like, this gun in the right hands could absolutely shred servers because it is the Martini Henry with more rounds. But for me, personally, with the way that the state of the game now, where everyone knows the layout of all the maps, most flanking routes are memorized, and the majority of engagements are had one-on-one with someone shooting back rather than being able to outflank people and shoot them in the back, I would just rather pick another rifle. So the Veterelli Vitali is going to stay in D tier. The other weapon I have here is the Mosin Nagant M91. Now the Mosin, I have the similar critiques to it as the Veterelli Vitali, but this time its comparisons are the Ross Mark III and the SMLE Mark III. They basically all share very similar bullet velocities and magazine counts between the Mosin and the Ross, and basically the same sweet spot ranges. The difference here is the Mosin Nagant's rechamber is incredibly obstructive and inconsistent. Basically what I mean by that is the rechamber moves the entire rifle, and then once you have re-ADS'd, half the time it feels like your scope has physically moved more than you would expect from standard scope sway, right? Like, think of it this way: if you're in an infantry site, you stay ADS'd and you rechamber, rather than just the standard scope sway like this, once you have rechambered, half the time it feels like your scope is now over here, which completely defeats the purpose then of using the infantry. So, like, once again, it's just, would you use the Mosin Nagant? Or would you pick something like the Ross, which is consistent if you want to stay scoped in, and then you have the straight pull bolt action? Or if you don't want to stay scoped in, to negate the effect of that, just use the SMLE, which has more rounds, and once again is consistent with its bolt. It's just, yeah, I don't know. The Mosin Nagant is going to stay in D tier. Alright, moving on to C tier. The first weapon I've got here is the Russian 1895. Now, to me, this is simply because the Russian feels like the most average of all of the longer range rifles available to the Scout. It's lever action, so its fire rate is like a little bit higher than some of the bolts, but other than that, its muzzle velocity is about middle of the pack. Its sweet spot, while it is nice, it's not as good as the other long-range options. And yeah, it's just, I haven't really got much else to say. I just personally would prefer to use something like the M1903 Springfield, the Gewehr 98, or the M1917 Enfield Silenced, for example. I would prefer to use them over the Russian. It's just, this is a personal preference pick. Feel free to move it wherever you want. The next one on this list I have is the Type 38 Arasaka. Now, personally, I love the Arasaka. The Arasaka is incredible. I particularly like the patrol because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the patrols have higher ADS speed than marksmen's, which is super, super cool with the Arasaka because the Arasaka is an aggressive rifle. It's got a really close range sweet spot. And with the patrol, because you ADS so quickly, you can just ADS bang, retreat to cover, ADS bang, retreat to cover, like, really quickly. It's really useful. The reason I have it in C, though, is because it doesn't see that much action overall. I'm particularly in Australian servers where I play, I am the only person that ever uses an Arasaka. I don't think I've been killed once in the past year by an Arasaka. And I play this game quite consistently, as you will know, for videos. So, yeah, it's just, on top of that, its rechamber can be a little obstructive, similar to the Mosin Nagant. In my opinion, it rechambers, like, fine where it goes to, but it does take up a lot of the screen when you do rechamber. And so, you can miss people, particularly if you're being really aggressive. So, you peek someone, you rechamber, but then there's someone coming to your right, you don't see them. Because you're rechambering, you get sprayed down. So, I'm gonna leave it here in C tier. I'd love to put it higher, but if I'm the only one using it, then that tells me that likely no one else likes it, and no one else can use it, and I'm just Jesus. I'm kidding, I'm not that good at this game. Moving on, we have the Carcano M91. Now, the Carcano is basically one of only two true trench-oriented, trench variant rifles in this class, right? It's got the really tight hip-fire accuracy, it has really fast ADS speed, and it's really, really aggressive. The reason I've got it in C tier is because its barrel is so much shorter, it's cut down. It's got pretty low bullet velocity. It's better than the Veterelli Vitale and the M.I.M.E, for example, but compared to other things, it's nowhere near as high. On top of that, it is not a one-shot headshot at all ranges. It does like 90 damage max past 100-ish meters. And so really, and because it doesn't have a sweet spot, you are really limited with this rifle to just playing super aggressively. Its best comparison to me would be the Gewehr M95 Carbine or the Russian 1895 Trench. But I would just take the Gewehr M95 over both of these rifles anytime because the Gewehr M95 Carbine is a one-shot to the head at all ranges. It doesn't have range drop-off. Sure, you sacrifice a little bit of ADS speed, but I'd much rather have the consistent headshot kill, no matter what, than a faster ADS speed. That's really it. Moving on to B tier, as we just discussed, I have the Gewehr M95. This is my true favourite. While I love the Arasaka, the Gewehr M95 is my favourite weapon in this class. Mostly because, in my opinion, the Gewehr 95 has the lowest floor, highest ceiling of all of the rifles in this class. It's got really good bullet velocity. It's similar to the SMLE Ross Mark III, but I think it's a little bit higher. It has a faster fire rate than every other gun in the class outside of the Russian Trench and the Carcano. And its rechamber is super consistent, and it reloads the full clip at a time rather than single rounds. So what this means is basically, you can get off the 5 rounds really, really quickly, take out 5 people, and then reload the whole clip at once. On top of that, you don't get stuck in reloading single rounds at a time and then being unable to cancel the animation. You just reload the whole clip whenever you need to reload, which I personally prefer. I'm not a big fan of loading single rounds unless it's a shotgun, because I can easily cancel the reload with a shotgun. Now, the Gewehr M95 doesn't have a sweet spot, so for most players, this weapon isn't gonna be their favorite. You have to get headshots with this thing, but it is a one-shot kill to the head at all ranges. So, in my opinion, that's why I say it has the highest ceiling, lowest floor. If you are bad at sniping, like if you're not that great, you only really get kills with a sweet spot hitting people in the chest, you will not like the Gewehr M95. However, if you are a really, really good and accurate sniper who can consistently hit headshots, the M95 is by far your best option. Just because of its fire rate is so much faster. You will be able to pop people quicker than anything else. So, I love the Gewehr M95, it's going to be in B tier. The next weapon I have is the Lebel 1886. Now, the Lebel is a bit of an odd choice for me because it comes in either an infantry or a sniper variant, and despite having the sniper variant, it isn't really like the other snipers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but its sweet spot is a lot closer. It's more similar, once again, to the Ross and the SMLE than something like the Gewehr 98 or the Springfield. It's a bit of an odd pick to give it such a high magnification scope with the sweet spot it has. On top of that, its bullet velocity I think is middle of the pack at about 120 meters per second, but where it really shines is the fact it has 8 rounds. However, the way it reloads, it has to bolt twice, and so that can be a bit annoying to play around sometimes when you're loading those last rounds. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan, however, it does have the most satisfying sound outside of the Martini Henry. Like, the solid thud it hits you with is very, very satisfying. But overall, I don't know if I would pick it consistently. I don't pick it consistently, I know that. But it's still very, very solid. It does its job well. And a lot of people are really, really good at this. They admire it and they love it because of the higher powered scope and the 8 rounds. But personally, I would just pick something like the FMLE Marksman, because 10 rounds, just straight stripper clips, the reload I don't have that same issue with, and the Marksman scope rather than the Sniper scope, because personally I'm not the biggest fan of the high powered optics. So, Lebel, B tier. The next rifle, and the last rifle I have in B tier, is the M1917 Enfield. Now, the Enfield infantry is awful. It is arguably the worst sniper in this entire class because of the sights. The iron sights are atrocious. You can't see. You literally cannot see. However, the suppressed, I love. The suppressed variant is probably my favorite long-range sniper rifle. However, I have to mark it down for the infantry sights being so bad. It is so bad. So we'll just talk about the suppressed variant. The suppressed has a sweet spot between 100 and 150 meters, I believe. I think it's actually the longest range sweet spot in the game. Despite that, though, it doesn't have the highest bullet velocity. It's got about 820 meters per second, which is about the same as all the other long-range ones. And then it's got the high-powered scope. It doesn't have a bipod, which I actually appreciate, because I never go prone. Proning is a death sentence as a sniper. Like, you want to be able to move, because the second you stand still, someone catches your scope glint, you're dead. So I really, really like the Enfield. Especially because the suppressor is also really, really nice. I love the sound of it. Especially like when you hit long-range snipes with the thing, you hear the suppressor go off, the sound ends, and then you get the Battlefield 1 headshot sound. It's just, oh, it's glorious. I love it. But I have to keep it lower than the other top-tier long-range rifles, simply because muzzle velocity is average, and the infantry sucks. Moving on to A tier, the top-tier wood smash rifles. First one on this list is the M1903 Springfield. Now, the M1903 is, in all intensive purposes, a worse version of the Gewehr 98. Simply because they are essentially the exact same thing, except the Gewehr 98 has a higher bullet velocity. M1903 has 120 meters per second, whereas the Gewehr M98 has 880 meters per second. They have basically the same sweet spot range, same reload speed, sort of. I think there might be slight differences, but it's basically the same thing. The M1903 does shoot 1 round per minute faster, so technically its bolt animation is a little bit quicker, but, like, what would you prefer? 60 more meters per second on your bullet velocity, or 1 round per minute faster? I'll let you pick. For me, I'm taking the fucking bullet velocity. You have to give it credit for the experimental. Like, the experimental is awesome. I love that thing. Is it a bit gimmicky sometimes? Yeah, its damage output's pretty bad, and you gotta have a good trigger finger to perform well with it. But it's fun. It's cool to use, especially, like, switching between the infantry variant and the experimental with the select fire option. That's super cool. I love doing that. If you want to have some fun, use the experimental. But comparing it to other things, just give me a Gewehr 98. Simple as that. Next one I have is the Martini Henry. Now, as I discussed earlier with the Vettorelli Vitali, Martini Henry, most aggressive rifle in the game. Most incredible sounding rifle in the game. Everyone loves the elephant gun. And on top of that, it is a consistent one-shot kill in its range because you one-shot to every part of the body. However, it is probably the most one-dimensional rifle out of all of these guns. Because essentially, if you are not using it at close range, in its sweet spot, the muzzle velocity will get you killed, because it is incredibly slow. On top of that, it only has a single round, so be prepared to rely heavily on your secondary. Make sure you have a good secondary. I recommend running this gun with the From a Stop Auto, because the From a Stop is very fast firing, and you can easily kill someone with a single mag at a time. All the other guns use the Mars, because basically the Mars is a one-shot cleanup at any range, as long as you hit them in the chest. But for the Martini Henry, get good with the From a Stop, you're going to need it. But despite the fact it is so one-dimensional, it is the best gun out of everything in its ideal range. It will consistently get you one-shot kills, and if you are good at positioning, you can dominate servers with this thing. The last rifle I have here is the Ross Mark III. Now the Ross Mark III and the SMLE are essentially the same gun, basically exact same bullet velocity, exact same sweet spot. Difference is the Ross Mark III has less ammunition, but a straight pull bolt action, whereas the SMLE has more ammunition, doesn't have the straight pull. They both also share, in my opinion, the best sweet spot in the game, as the majority of engagements in Battlefield 1 will occur within the 40 to 75 meters that these weapons have on them. And so, across all maps, they're probably your most consistent rifles to use, because their bullet velocity will get you by no matter what. They've got ammunition. It just really comes down to, do you prefer the straight pull, or do you prefer ammo? I prefer ammo, so Ross Mark III is A. Finally, we'll just knock out the two S tiers together, because I already spoke about them in the A tier. I have the Gewehr 98 and the SMLE Mark III. Now, the Gewehr 98 is here because it is simply it's the best long-range sniper in the game, right? Highest bullet velocity, same sweet spot as the M1903, good rechamber, fires reasonably fast, 60 rounds per minute is middle of the pack, but you're meant to be using it at range. Has the bipod if you want it, has the sniper scope so you can play long range, it fits that role really well. It's just the best at doing the long range stuff out of all the other guns in this class. The other weapon I have is the SMLE Mark III, because as I stated just before, it is the most versatile sniper in this class, particularly when you consider that the rifles in the Scout class are easily the most one-dimensional out of all of the rifles, has the highest magazine capacity out of all of the guns, excluding the experimental with 10 rounds, best sweet spot in the game, decent bullet velocity, decent rechamber speed, decent fire rate. It's just really, really consistent and will get the job done every map in the game. Thanks for making it to the end of the video, guys. As I stated earlier, this weapon is a lot more based on personal opinion because the Scout class is hard to rank. As I said, a lot of the guns are extremely similar. It just comes down to magazine capacity, sweet spot, and bullet velocity. If you, of course, liked the video, make sure to leave a like. And if you're new around here and want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe with post notifications turned on. I'm uploading consistent Battlefield content throughout the week. With the YouTubery crap out of the way, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.